Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a fascinating concept that honestly sounds a bit counterintuitive at first glance. We're going to explore how a 2,000-year-old Finnish practice, one that involves extreme, intense heat, might actually hold the ultimate key to solving our most stubborn modern communication breakdowns. Seriously, if you've ever felt like talking to someone is just like hitting a brick wall, well, you're in exactly the right place. So, let's just start by acknowledging a universal truth we all kind of share right now. Modern communication is completely broken. I mean, why is it that the conversations that matter the absolute most, the ones that could actually resolve conflicts, align our teams, or heal our families, are the ones we constantly avoid? The source material we're digging into today points to a few major culprits. Look around. We are living in an era defined by intense polarization. We are constantly hiding behind our screens, building up these massive walls, instead of just facing people directly. But even deeper than that, human hierarchy and our own egos are constantly blocking honesty. We get so wrapped up in our job titles, our social status, and this constant need to perform that true, unvarnished communication, it rarely ever happens. Now consider this quote from the source. Every great negotiation in history has required a moment when the parties stopped negotiating and started talking. The Finns figured out how to create that moment reliably, on demand, using nothing more than hot stones and cold water. Just think about the weight of that for a second. It's suggesting that formal negotiation, all the posturing, the endless debating, is often the exact thing preventing a solution. The real breakthrough only happens when people just start talking as human beings. And Finnish culture has essentially biohacked this exact transition. Which brings us right into the heart of how they do it, the sauna environment method. The brilliant work by Seppo H. Metsala in Sauna Diplomacy comprehensively maps out this ancient art of solving the impossible. And when you really look at it, you realize this isn't just some quirky cultural pastime. Not at all. It's a deeply tested framework. We're talking about a method used in everything from incredibly tense presidential summits all the way down to corporate boardrooms and regular family living rooms. It perfectly illustrates how taking people completely out of their normal context and dropping them into extreme heat just completely shatters their barriers. And that leads us to the absolute core philosophy of this whole practice. When words fail, heat succeeds. Sometimes our mental and verbal defenses are just way too strong. We're too good at arguing, right? We're too good at deflecting. In those moments, true connection literally requires a physical disruptor. The intense heat acts as an external force that physically prevents you from holding up your usual verbal armor. The contrast here is just incredibly stark. Think about our normal reality. We face polarization, we stare at screens, we perform for an audience, and we lean so heavily on our rank and ego. But step into the extreme heat of this method, and those defenses quite literally melt away. The clothing comes off, which means the expensive tailored suits and the intimidating uniforms gone. The fancy titles disappear. You obviously can't bring your smartphone into a sauna, so there are absolutely zero distractions. You aren't armed with a hidden agenda or a 50-slide presentation. What remains is just pure humanity. No agendas, no distractions, no hierarchy. Okay, so how does this actually work on a biological level? Let's get into the mechanics of heat. The source material outlines 5 core mechanisms that happen to your body and mind in that room. First up is the physiological reset. The heat actually reduces your stress hormones and kicks your brain's trust chemistry into high gear, literally forcing your defenses down. Second is mental clarity. The physical sensation is so intense that your racing mind has to slow down, cutting through the noise so you can actually think clearly. Third is the social equalizer, which completely ends hierarchy. Fourth is contrast and renewal, giving you this massive emotional release. And finally, ancient wisdom, relying on a 2,000-year-old practice that, amazingly, is now entirely backed by modern science. It proves this is way more than just a spa day. It's an active biological unwinding of human conflict. I want to pause on that social equalizer mechanism because it's so profound. Think about how much of our everyday communication relies on visual power cues. Who sits at the head of the boardroom table? Who has the nicest watch? Well, in this environment, there are no clothes and no roles. You are forced to look at the CEO or the foreign diplomat or even just your stubborn relative as simply another human being. When hierarchy ends, honesty literally has no choice but to begin. I mean, you can't exactly hide behind your executive rank when you're just sitting on a wooden bench sweating. And the physical cycle that triggers these massive social breakthroughs? It's beautifully simple yet intensely powerful. It's just 4 steps: extreme heat, followed by cold, then rest, and repeat. This sharp cycle of contrast and renewal fully resets the physical body. It forces a state of absolute presence. You can't be agonizing over yesterday's argument or stressing about tomorrow's deadline when you're plunging into freezing cold water. This cycle opens the mind up and allows those deeply buried, unspoken emotions to finally release.
So let's talk about the actual outcomes here. Let's look at real results that last.
The true beauty of this method is just how universally it applies. It's for leaders and diplomats trying to untangle seemingly impossible international challenges. It's for executives and entrepreneurs who need to build actual trust to close deals that matter. It's for families and communities desperately needing to have healing conversations. Frankly, as the source points out, it is for absolutely anyone ready for real change. Anyone who just wants honesty, understanding, and better outcomes in their life. When you actually apply this, the outcomes are incredibly deep, built on 4 foundational pillars. First, you get trust without agendas. Real connection without the fake performance. Second, dialogue beyond borders. The ability to have real conversations across any divide, whether that's political or personal. Third, relationships that last generations, moving away from those cheap short-term transactions into true, lasting partnerships. And fourth, a shared well-being that unites us all, because ultimately, better, healthier people make better decisions, which makes a better world for all of us. If we had to distill all of these amazing results down to one single overriding theme, it would be this: wisdom over ego. When you create instant rapport and genuine connection right out of the gate, you strip away all that exhausting posturing. The conversations you have in this state, they aren't about who is right and who is wrong. They're about clarity. And when your decisions are driven by clarity and wisdom rather than your ego, you arrive at solutions that actually work in the real world. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Could your toughest conversations benefit from shedding the ego and turning up the heat? Our world desperately needs better conversations right now, and it is pretty obvious our modern tools aren't always getting the job done. Whether you go find an actual physical sauna or you just figure out a way to strip away the agendas, the screens, and the titles in your own environment, the 2,000-year-old Finnish wisdom is crystal clear. Sometimes to move from bitter division to genuine connection, you have to disrupt the norm, drop the armor, and remember that underneath it all, we are all just humans trying to understand each other. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I truly hope it changes how you approach your next impossible conversation.